That's probably like your whole hourly wage, right? Vanessa Sterling's voice dripped with mockery as she dropped $2 bills into the tip jar, her designer bag worth more than Maya's entire month's rent. What Vanessa didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the quiet scholarship girl she'd been tormenting for months could buy her family's hotel chain with a single phone call. Maya Okonkwo had more money in her trust fund than all of Westridge Academy combined, but she'd chosen to hide it. The question is, when the truth finally explodes, who will Maya become when she has all the power and Vanessa has none?
Fair African Tales. Subscribe and turn on the bell for new stories.
Maya Okonkwo learned early that money doesn't buy friends, it buys actors. Every birthday party after her father's tech company went public felt like an audition. Kids suddenly remembering her name, their parents armed with business cards and investment pitches. By 15, she'd perfected the smile that said, "Yes, I see exactly what you want from me." So when her father's company relocated and she had the chance to start over at Westridge Academy, Maya made a choice that would change everything. She would disappear into plain sight, strip away the armor of wealth, and discover who she really was when the money didn't matter. What she didn't count on was Vanessa Sterling and the particular cruelty of teenage girls who mistake zip codes for self-worth. The bus lurched to a stop outside Westridge Academy's wrought iron gates, and Maya adjusted her faded thrift store cardigan. Around her, a parade of luxury vehicles glided past, Tesla after Mercedes after BMW, depositing perfectly groomed students onto manicured walkways. She watched a girl emerge from a Range Rover, her designer bag probably worth more than 3 months of Maya's carefully calculated $500 monthly allowance. The girl didn't even glance at the driver before the SUV pulled away. Maya committed that carelessness to memory. This was why she was here. This casual cruelty of abundance. She'd seen it consume every friendship she'd ever had, watched genuine connection curdle into transaction the moment someone Googled her father's name and saw the 9 zeros attached to his net worth. The school rose before her like a temple to American aspiration. All red brick and ivy and architectural confidence. Maya took a breath and stepped through the gates into her experiment. She'd convinced her father this was necessary, that living in a modest apartment instead of his downtown penthouse, working for her spending money, attending this school as just another student instead of Marcus Okonkwo's daughter, this was how she'd learn what mattered. He'd agreed, reluctantly, his own memories of poverty still sharp enough to understand her hunger for something real. But standing here now, watching the effortless choreography of wealth around her, Maya felt the first flutter of doubt. Could you really unlearn privilege, or was she just a rich girl playing poor? The morning bell scattered her thoughts, and Maya followed the current of students into Building A, AP Literature, room 304. She climbed the stairs, noting the casual way everyone moved, like they'd been born knowing these hallways. The classroom smelled of old books and air conditioning, and Maya chose a seat in the back corner, the place where invisible people sit. Students filtered in, their conversations a symphony of summer in the Hamptons, Mediterranean cruises, ski chalets in Aspen. Maya pulled out a notebook, the 99-cent composition book from CVS, and pretended to read while really watching, learning the ecosystem she'd infiltrated. That's when Vanessa Sterling entered, and the whole room seemed to recalibrate around her presence. She was beautiful in that effortless way that requires tremendous effort, her honey-coloured hair catching light, Her uniform somehow both regulation and rebellion. 3 girls orbited her like moons. Madison, all sharp cheekbones and sharper comments. Bree, whose laugh came half a second too late. And Chelsea, whose bored expression suggested she'd seen everything twice. They moved as a unit, claiming the center of the room, the best seats, the most oxygen. Maya watched Vanessa scan the classroom, her gaze passing over Maya without recognition, without interest, without seeing her at all. Perfect. Class began, and Maya found herself raising her hand, offering an interpretation about Gatsby's green light, being less about Daisy and more about the American disease of confusing wealth with worth. Their teacher, Mrs. Pemberton's eyes lit up. Excellent, Miss Okonkwo. That's exactly the kind of critical thinking we value here. In the front row, Vanessa's head turned slightly. Just a fraction, but Maya caught it. First contact. First ripple in the water. She'd been noticed, and now came the assessment, the social calculus that would determine where Maya belonged in Westridge's carefully maintained hierarchy. Lunch was its own kind of theatre, the cafeteria arranged like a map of power and belonging. And in the absolute centre, commanding the best table with the best light, sat Vanessa Sterling and her court. Maya bought lunch, the basic meal plan, nothing fancy, and looked for somewhere to become invisible. That's when she spotted him. Ethan Rodriguez sat alone at a table near the emergency exit, his sketchbook open, completely absorbed in whatever he was creating. His uniform was clean but worn, the blazer slightly too large, there was paint under his fingernails. Maya recognized something in his isolation, a careful separation, like he'd chosen this distance because the alternative was exhausting. "This seat taken?" Maya asked. He glanced around at the dozen empty chairs, then back at her with a slight smile. "All yours. I'm Ethan." "Maya?" They sat in comfortable silence, Maya unpacking her modest lunch while Ethan returned to his sketch. She snuck a glance at his work, a portrait of the cafeteria lady, rendered with such detail and obvious affection that it made Maya's throat tight. "You're new," Ethan said without looking up. "Scholarship or legacy?" The question was direct, no judgment in it. Maya had prepared for this. "Scholarship," she lied, and felt immediately strange about it. Ethan nodded. "Same. Financial aid and 2 jobs. You'll want to avoid that table." He tilted his head toward Vanessa's kingdom. Vanessa Sterling and the wolves in designer clothing. They make it their personal mission to remind scholarship kids where we stand. Before Maya could respond, a burst of laughter erupted from that exact table, and she looked up to see Vanessa and her friends staring directly at her and Ethan, their expressions a mix of amusement and something sharper. Madison whispered something to Vanessa, who smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. Maya understood. She'd been categorized, filed away, her social fate sealed. Scholarship girl, poor, irrelevant, other. What Vanessa didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Maya had more money in her trust fund than all their families combined, that her father's net worth was measured in billions, not millions, that the modest apartment she lived in was a choice, not a circumstance. But as Maya sat there, watching Vanessa turn away dismissively, she felt something unexpected. Not anger at the injustice, but a strange relief. Finally, people were showing her who they really were before she got attached. The rest of the day unfolded in a series of small humiliations. Vanessa's group accidentally bumped her in the hallway, scattering her books. In chemistry, Madison made a show of moving her designer bag away from Maya's chair, like poverty might be contagious. During gym, when teams were chosen, Maya was picked last, and Chelsea made sure everyone heard her dramatic sigh about being stuck with the charity case. Each incident was small enough to be deniable, calculated enough to be intentional. This was social warfare conducted with the precision of girls who'd been training for it since birth. But Maya endured. She kept her face neutral, her spine straight, her responses minimal. By the time 3 o'clock arrived and she escaped onto the bus, Maya felt exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical effort. This was the tiredness of constant vigilance, of armor that couldn't be removed. The bus route took her across town, from Westridge's manicured neighborhood to the working district where she'd rented her apartment. Maya watched the transformation through the window, thinking about the invisible lines that divided the city. She got off at 5th and Monroe, walked 2 blocks to Common Grounds Coffee, and pushed through the door into her second life. Maya, right on time. Rosa Martinez looked up from the espresso machine, her smile genuine and warm. When Maya had applied for the job, Rosa had looked at her suspiciously blank application, then at Maya's face, and hired her anyway. Slow afternoon, you can start with inventory. Maya tied on her apron and felt herself settling into this version of herself. Here she was just Maya the barista, earning $8.75 an hour. That money felt more real than any allowance ever had. Then at 4:30 the door chimed and Vanessa Sterling walked in with Madison and Bree. Maya's stomach dropped. This wasn't discovery. This was reconnaissance. Someone had mentioned where Maya worked and Vanessa had come to see for herself. "Oh my God, Maya, do you work here?" Vanessa's voice carried across the shop. "That is so inspiring. Good for you, really putting in that hustle." There was nothing respectful in her tone. Maya felt every eye in the coffee shop turn toward her, felt the moment crystallize into something she'd remember forever. She could end this now. One word about her father, one mention of his name, and Vanessa's smug satisfaction would curdle into horror. But that wasn't why she was here. So Maya smiled her customer service smile and asked what she could get them. Vanessa made a show of ordering the most complicated drink possible. A triple shot, half-caff, oat milk latte with vanilla and caramel and cinnamon. Extra hot but not too hot. It was a power play, asserting dominance through demands. Maya made their drinks perfectly. When she called out the order, Vanessa approached with her wallet, pulled out $2 bills from a stack of 20s and dropped them into the tip jar. "That's probably like your whole hourly wage." "Right," Vanessa's voice was loud enough to carry. "Don't spend it all in one place." They left in a cloud of expensive perfume and cheaper satisfaction. Rosa appeared at Maya's elbow, her hand gentle on Maya's shoulder. "You okay, Mija?" Maya nodded, but her hands were shaking. Not from anger, she'd expected this, but from the sudden understanding of what she'd signed up for. This wasn't a game. She'd chosen to live on this side of the wealth divide, and that meant enduring everything that came with it. That night, Maya's phone buzzed. A text from her father. How was the first day? She could call him right now, tell him about Vanessa, and he'd probably pull her out of Westridge immediately, but that would mean she'd learn nothing. Maya typed back, "Interesting, learning a lot." Monday arrived with the inevitability of storm clouds, and Maya discovered that Vanessa's coffee shop visit had been just the opening act. By first period, everyone knew. The whispers followed Maya down the hallway. Scholarship student, works at a coffee shop, rides the bus, Paul. Someone had created a Finsta account called Westridge Scholarship Chronicles, featuring a photo of Maya in her barista apron. By lunch, it had 300 followers. Over the next 2 weeks, the campaign continued with methodical precision. Vanessa excluded Maya from group projects. She accidentally spilled iced coffee on Maya's backpack. In the hallways, she and her friends would fall silent when Maya passed, then burst into exaggerated laughter. It was death by 1,000 cuts. What made it bearable was Ethan. He became her guide to Westridge's hidden world, the scholarship students who existed in the school's margins. He worked 2 jobs himself, saving every penny for art supplies and college applications. His talent was obvious, but he couldn't afford the portfolio development classes that students like Madison took. 3 weeks into the semester, Maya's phone rang during her shift. Her father, his face serious on the FaceTime screen. "Your brother showed me something." He showed her the Westridge Scholarship Chronicles account, which had expanded to include photos of Maya taking the bus, eating alone, working. The captions were getting meaner. "This has crossed a line," her father said. "I'm pulling you out." "No, not yet." They argued, but finally he agreed to wait. Maya hung up and felt the weight of her choice. She could stop this any time. That was her privilege. Ethan couldn't. And maybe that was the point. The next morning, Principal Hayes announced that Westridge's arts program was being cut unless they could raise $200,000. The auditorium erupted in dismay, but no one looked more devastated than Ethan. Then Vanessa Sterling stood up. "My family would like to pledge $50,000 to save the arts program." The applause was thunderous. Vanessa had just bought herself a legacy, but Maya knew something no one else did. When she checked the announcement for Vanessa's fundraiser event, she saw keynote speaker to be announced. And Maya's father was that speaker. She had 3 weeks until the event, 3 weeks before everyone discovered who she really was. 3 weeks to figure out what kind of person she wanted to be when the truth finally came out. Because when that moment arrived, when Vanessa Sterling learned she'd been tormenting a billionaire's daughter, everything would change, and Maya was terrified of what would happen next. Not because she feared Vanessa's reaction, but because she feared her own. When she had all the power and Vanessa had none, what kind of person would she choose to be? The Monday after the arts program announcement, Maya walked into Westridge Academy and immediately sensed something had shifted. The hallways felt charged, electric with a new kind of energy. Vanessa Sterling was everywhere. Posters featuring her perfect smile plastered on every wall, announcing the Sterling Family Fundraiser event. "Save the arts, save our future," they proclaimed, with Vanessa positioned like some kind of educational savior. But it was the small detail at the bottom that made Maya's blood run cold every time she passed one. "Special keynote speaker, tech visionary Marcus Okonkwo." Her father's name in bold letters, his face from a recent Forbes photoshoot staring back at her. The countdown had begun, and there was no stopping it now. Vanessa's reign of terror intensified with her newfound hero status. She wasn't just the rich girl anymore, she was the philanthropist, the change maker, the student who cared. Teachers praised her during announcements. The principal personally thanked her family at morning assembly. Even students who'd never paid attention to Vanessa before suddenly orbited her, drawn to the gravity of her generosity. And with each accolade, each piece of praise, Vanessa's cruelty toward Maya sharpened. It was as if she needed to prove her superiority even more now. needed to reinforce the distance between them. Because if someone like Maya, poor, invisible, irrelevant, could exist in the same space as Vanessa Sterling, philanthropist, then what did Vanessa's wealth and charity really mean? The question Maya kept asking herself was this: how long can you watch someone celebrate themselves for kindness while they're actively being cruel to you? How do you hold that contradiction without losing your mind? She found herself observing Vanessa with almost scientific detachment, cataloguing the way she could switch between personas. In class, discussing the fundraiser with Mrs. Pemberton, Vanessa was articulate and passionate about arts education. In the hallway, passing Maya, she was all whispered comments and deliberate shoulder checks. It was like watching someone perform two completely different people, and Maya wondered, which one was real? Or were they both real, and that was the truly terrifying thing about human nature? Ethan noticed Maya's growing obsession. They sat in their usual corner of the cafeteria, his sketchbook open to a new drawing, a haunting portrait of a girl with two faces, one kind and one cruel, seamlessly merged. "That's Vanessa," Maya said, not a question but a recognition. Ethan nodded, his pencil still moving. "I've been thinking about masks lately, about how we all wear them, but some people's masks have masks." He looked up at Maya then, and there was something knowing in his eyes that made her uncomfortable. The question is, what happens when the masks come off? Are we still who we thought we were underneath? Before Maya could answer, a commotion erupted across the cafeteria. Vanessa stood at her table, her phone in hand, her face twisted with something between anger and tears. Madison and Bree clustered around her, their expressions shocked. Within seconds, the entire cafeteria had gone silent, all eyes on the drama unfolding at the center table. Maya watched as Vanessa's hands shook, watched as she tried to compose herself and failed. "Who did this?" Vanessa's voice cracked across the silence. "Who posted this?" Someone had created a counter-account to Westridge Scholarship Chronicles. This one called Sterling Silver Lies. The account had posted screenshots of text messages, allegedly from Vanessa's private conversations, discussing ways to make scholarship students feel unwelcome at Westridge, planning pranks, laughing about poverty. The messages were cruel in their calculated precision, and whether they were real or fabricated didn't matter. The damage was immediate. Students pulled out their phones, the screenshots spreading like wildfire. Teachers rushed over. The cafeteria descended into chaos. And Maya sat there, watching it unfold, feeling something complicated twist in her chest. This should have felt like justice. Instead, it felt like witnessing someone's public destruction, and it made her sick. Later, Maya would wonder, did she create this? Had her presence, her silent endurance, somehow triggered this response from someone else? Had another scholarship student decided to fight back? The thought haunted her because she realized she didn't know how she felt about it. Vanessa deserved consequences for her cruelty, didn't she? But this public humiliation, this exposure, it felt too close to the very thing Maya had been trying to escape. The weaponization of information, the destruction of reputation, the way power could shift in an instant when secrets were revealed. And Maya had the biggest secret of all, one that would detonate in less than 3 weeks. The school administration launched an investigation into both accounts. Both Westridge Scholarship Chronicles and Sterling Silver Lies were taken down. Students were called into the principal's office. The drama consumed Westridge for days, and in the chaos, something unexpected happened. Vanessa became vulnerable. Maya watched as the girl's carefully constructed armor developed cracks. In class, Vanessa was quieter. In the hallways, she moved differently, less certain, glancing around like she expected attack from any direction. Her friends still surrounded her, but there was tension now, wariness. Madison and Bree exchanged looks when Vanessa wasn't watching, and Maya recognized those looks. They were re-evaluating their loyalty, calculating the social cost of continued association. But it was Chelsea who surprised everyone. 3 days after the account incident, Chelsea sat down next to Maya in the library. Just sat down, without preamble or explanation, and opened her textbook. Maya stared at her, confused. Chelsea didn't look up. "Those messages were real," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. "I was there when Vanessa sent most of them, and I didn't say anything because I was scared of being her next target." She finally met Maya's eyes, and there were tears in hers. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that someone saw it. Someone knows it was wrong." Maya didn't know what to say to that. What do you say when your tormentor's accomplice confesses? When someone admits they watched you suffer and did nothing? The easy response would be anger, but Maya felt something more complicated, a recognition that fear was a powerful motivator, that complicity wasn't always the same as cruelty, and that maybe everyone at Westridge was trapped in Vanessa's orbit in different ways. Chelsea got up and left without waiting for a response, and Maya sat there wondering if this was what her experiment had revealed, that the system of privilege and cruelty wasn't held up by one cruel person, but by dozens of scared ones who chose silence over solidarity. Time kept moving, indifferent to Maya's internal crisis. 2 weeks until the event, then 10 days. The school was consumed with preparations, decorations, catering, silent auction items. Vanessa threw herself into the planning with manic energy, as if she could rebuild her reputation through sheer force of charitable intent. And maybe she could. People had short memories for cruelty when generosity was performed loudly enough. Maya watched students who'd been horrified by those screenshots slowly return to Vanessa's orbit, seduced by the promise of the event, the glamour of it. The social currency of attending an event at the Sterling Hotel. But Ethan wasn't preparing. Ethan was breaking. Maya found him one afternoon in the art room, sitting alone among half-finished canvases, his face blank with a kind of grief she recognized. "I can't afford the event ticket," he said without looking at her. $500, that's 2 months of my bookstore job. And even if I could, what would be the point? I'll lose the arts program anyway once I graduate. This is just delaying the inevitable." His voice was hollow, defeated, and Maya felt something crack inside her chest. This was the cost of her experiment. Sitting here with resources to help but rules she'd imposed on herself that prevented it. What good was understanding struggle if you just watched people struggle and did nothing? "What if there was another way?" Maya heard herself say. "What if we could fund the program differently? Smaller donations from more people, something sustainable instead of just one big donor." Ethan looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw the question forming in his eyes. How would Maya Okonkwo, scholarship student and barista, know anything about fundraising strategy? How would she understand donor diversification and sustainable giving models? Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her, felt her carefully constructed identity beginning to crack under the weight of her own knowledge, her own education in wealth management and philanthropy that she'd absorbed by proximity to her father's world. She was giving herself away in small moments, revealing the edges of who she really was. But Ethan didn't push. He just nodded slowly. "That's a good idea, but it's too late. The event is in a week. There's no time to build something new." And he was right. The clock had run out, not just on Maya's secret, but on any alternative vision for saving the arts program. Marcus Okonkwo would take that stage in 7 days. He would make his speech about education and opportunity. Someone would make the connection to Maya. And then the entire house of cards would collapse. The only question was, what would Maya do when it did? That night, Rosa asked Maya to stay after her shift at Common Grounds. They sat in the empty coffee shop, the chairs stacked on tables around them, and Rosa studied Maya with the kind of seeing that made Maya want to confess everything. "You're running out of time for something," Rosa said. It wasn't a question. "I don't know what, but I can see it on you, the weight of a secret that's about to break open." Maya almost told her then, almost explained everything, her father, the money, the experiment, the event. But she couldn't find the words because she didn't know what the story meant anymore. Was she the hero of this narrative, trying to understand privilege? Or was she the villain, appropriating struggle while having an escape hatch the whole time? Rosa reached across the table and took Maya's hand. "Whatever it is, Miha, remember this. Being honest about who you are isn't a betrayal of who you wanted to be. Sometimes the truth is the only way forward, even when it feels like failure." 5 days until the event, Maya's father called, asked if she was ready for the revelation, offered to find an excuse to skip the event. Maya refused. She'd started this experiment, and she needed to see it through to whatever ending awaited. 4 days. Vanessa announced the event had sold out, over 300 tickets, every seat filled. 3 days. Chelsea approached Maya again, asked quietly if they could talk after the event was over, said she had things to confess. 2 days. Ethan showed Maya a drawing he'd made, a girl standing at a crossroads, one path leading to a golden palace, the other to a simple house, and the girl's face reflected both destinations somehow, torn between 2 worlds. 1 day. Maya stood in her modest apartment, looking at the dress her father had sent over. Expensive but understated, designer but not obviously so, the kind of dress that could belong to either version of herself. She thought about Vanessa, probably in her mansion right now, preparing for her moment of triumph. She thought about Ethan, who wouldn't be there because he couldn't afford the price of admission. She thought about Rosa's words about honesty being the only way forward, and Maya realized that the question she'd been asking herself was wrong. It wasn't about what kind of person she'd be when she had all the power and Vanessa had none. It was about what kind of person she'd choose to be when everyone finally saw her completely, without masks, without performance, without the ability to hide behind either poverty or privilege. Tomorrow night at the Sterling Hotel, surrounded by 300 people who thought they knew exactly who she was, Maya Okonkwo would discover if she knew who she was at all. And honestly, she was terrified of the answer. Because here's what no one tells you about truth. It doesn't set you free. It just forces you to live with yourself, fully visible, completely exposed. And sometimes that's the hardest thing of all. The Sterling Hotel ballroom glittered like something out of a dream or a nightmare, depending on where you stood in the social hierarchy. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across 300 faces, all dressed in their finest armor of silk and designer labels. Maya Okonkwo stood near the entrance, her heart hammering against her ribs, watching Westridge Academy's elite celebrate their own generosity. Vanessa Sterling moved through the crowd like royalty, accepting congratulations, her smile perfect and practiced. She hadn't noticed Maya yet, but she would. The question wasn't if the truth would come out tonight. The question was, who would Maya choose to become when it did? The evening began with the silent auction, students and parents bidding on donated items while a string quartet played tasteful background music. Maya watched Ethan's mural design go up for auction. He donated the concept even though he couldn't afford to attend. The bidding stalled at $200, and Maya felt her hands clench. She could bid higher, could ensure his work was valued properly, but that would draw attention she wasn't ready for. Not yet. The moment would choose itself, her father had told her that morning. Truth has its own timing, Maya. You can't control when it arrives. You can only control who you are when it does. Principal Hayes took the stage as dinner service began, thanking the Sterling family effusively, praising Vanessa's leadership and vision. From across the ballroom, Maya saw Vanessa's smile widen, saw her sit up straighter, absorbing the validation like oxygen. And Maya understood something crucial in that moment. Vanessa needed this. Not wanted it, needed it. Her entire sense of self was built on being exceptional, being recognized, being worthy. Without that external validation, who was Vanessa Sterling? Maybe that was the real question. Not who Maya was without money, but who Vanessa was without applause. Then Principal Hayes said the words that made time slow down. And now, our keynote speaker, a man who embodies the American dream, who built a tech empire from nothing and never forgot where he came from, please welcome Marcus Okonkwo. The ballroom erupted in applause. Maya's father walked onto the stage, commanding and confident, and the room leaned forward collectively, drawn to his presence. Maya watched Vanessa's face transform from pleased to confused. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. But why would a billionaire tech mogul be speaking at their high school fundraiser? Marcus Okonkwo began his speech with a story about sleeping in his car during community college, about being invisible to people who mattered, about understanding that poverty wasn't a moral failure, but a circumstance that could change. His voice filled the ballroom, personal and powerful. I made money, yes, more than I ever imagined, but I also made a promise that my children would understand the value of things beyond price tags, that they would know how to see people who society renders invisible. And then his eyes found Maya across the crowded room. My daughter understands this better than I do. She chose to live simply, to work for her spending money, to attend school without the shield of wealth. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to know who she was when none of that mattered. The ballroom went silent. You could feel the collective calculation happening, 300 minds processing the same information simultaneously. Marcus Okonkwo, Maya Okonkwo. The scholarship student who worked at a coffee shop was the billionaire's daughter. The quiet girl they'd dismissed was one of the wealthiest students in the building. The person Vanessa Sterling had been tormenting for months had more money, more power, more influence than Vanessa could imagine. Maya felt every eye turn toward her, felt the weight of recognition, of exposure, of truth finally arriving whether she was ready or not. But Marcus wasn't finished. Tonight, I'm announcing that the Okonkwo Foundation will match all donations, dollar for dollar, ensuring this arts program doesn't just survive but thrives for generations. More applause, but Maya barely heard it. She was watching Vanessa, who sat frozen at her table, her face cycling through emotions too fast to name. Shock, humiliation, anger, confusion. And underneath it all, something that looked almost like grief. Because in one moment, everything Vanessa had built, her social position, her superiority, her carefully constructed identity, had collapsed like a house built on sand. The speeches ended, the fundraiser continued. But the ballroom had split into two camps. Those who rushed to approach Maya with suddenly friendly faces and business card smiles, and those who hung back, reassessing everything they thought they knew. Maya excused herself, needing air, needing space, needing to escape the suffocating weight of visibility. She found herself in a hallway outside the ballroom, her back against the wall, trying to remember how to breathe. And that's where Vanessa found her. "Why didn't you say anything?" Vanessa's voice was raw, stripped of its usual confidence. She stood a few feet away, her perfect composure shattered. "You let me, God, you let me treat you like—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Maya straightened, met Vanessa's eyes, and asked the question she'd been holding on to for months. "Would you have been nicer to me if you'd known? Or would you have just wanted something from me?" The silence stretched between them, honest and painful. "Every friend I made after my dad's company went public suddenly needed favors, connections, money. I just wanted to know who I was when none of that mattered, and I wanted to see who everyone else really was too." Vanessa's face crumpled. "You made a fool of me. Everyone saw, they all know I was." But Maya shook her head. "I didn't make you do anything, Vanessa. You chose how to treat me. You chose cruelty. I just chose not to stop you with money." The words landed like stones in still water, and Maya watched Vanessa process them, watch something shift behind her eyes. "I thought I mattered because of what my family had," Vanessa said quietly. "And you actually have everything, but you chose nothing. What does that make me?" It was the most honest question Vanessa had ever asked, and Maya realized this was the moment that mattered. Not her father's revelation, not the public exposure. This, two girls standing in a hallway, stripped of their armor, asking real questions about identity and worth, and what it means to be human in a world obsessed with hierarchy. "It makes you someone who has a choice now," Maya said. "You can keep building your worth on being better than other people, or you can figure out who you are when that doesn't matter either." They stood there for a long moment, and Maya wondered if anything she'd said would make a difference. If understanding really changed people, or if we just returned to our comfortable patterns because change was too hard. She didn't know. But when Vanessa finally walked back into the ballroom, her shoulders were different, less certain, more human. And Maya thought maybe that was enough. Maybe the point wasn't transformation, but awareness. Maybe seeing yourself clearly was the first step, even if the second step took years to come. 3 months later, Maya still worked at Common Grounds, but now she'd helped Rosa buy the building through a foundation. Ethan's mural was installed at Westridge, and Maya had quietly ensured he got the portfolio development support he needed. Vanessa had started volunteering at a community centre, not for college applications, but genuinely trying to understand the world beyond her bubble. They weren't friends, maybe they never would be, but they nodded to each other in hallways. And that felt more honest than any performed friendship ever could. Maya had learned that you can't separate yourself from your circumstances entirely, but you can choose what you do with them. That privilege acknowledged is privilege that creates change. That authenticity isn't performing poverty or wealth. It's being honest about all of who you are. And that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let people see you completely, even when it's terrifying. So here's my question for you. What masks are you wearing? What version of yourself are you performing because it's easier than being honest? And what would happen if you let those masks drop? Even for a moment, drop your answer in the comments below. Tell me about a time you chose honesty over performance, or a moment when someone's truth changed how you saw them. And if this story made you think differently about privilege, struggle, or identity, hit that like button and subscribe, because we're exploring more stories that challenge how we see ourselves and each other. The conversation doesn't end here, it begins with you. So tell me, what did you learn from Maya's journey? I'll be reading every comment, and who knows, your story might inspire our next one. Now go ahead, be brave, and share your truth below.